Retirement in 2026 isn't failing because boomers made bad choices. It's failing because the entire system was designed for an economy that died 30 years ago and nobody bothered to update the blueprint. Here's what that looks like in practice. I met a guy last month at a gas station in Tampa, 74 years old, told me he wakes up at 4:30 every morning to stock shelves at Walmart for $14.75 an hour. Not because he's bored, because his Social Security check is $1,600 a month and his property tax went up $900 this year. His wife has diabetes. The insulin alone is $340 monthly, even with Medicare. Do the math. That's not retirement. That's survival with a senior discount. And he's not alone. 50% of all baby boomers have less than $100,000 saved for retirement. 1 in 4 has nothing, zero. And the ones who did save, a lot of them watched half of it evaporate in 2008, then got hit again during the pandemic. So the question isn't whether boomers can afford to retire anymore. The question is whether retirement, as we were promised it would work, was ever actually designed to function in the first place. I'm going to walk you through exactly how this system works, why it's collapsing under its own weight, and what's actually happening on the ground right now in 2026. Because the story you've been told about retirement, the one about saving diligently and reaping rewards, that story had some very specific assumptions baked into it. And almost none of them are true anymore. Think of retirement like a game of musical chairs. The music is your working years. The chairs are the resources you need to survive. Social Security, pensions, savings, 401ks, home equity. When the music stops, when you retire, you need a chair. The system was designed in the 1930s and 40s when there were 5 workers paying into Social Security for every 1 retiree. That's 5 people keeping the music going for 1 person sitting down. Today, it's 2.8 workers per retiree. By 2035, it'll be 2.3. The chairs are disappearing, but we're still pretending there are enough for everyone. Here's where it starts to break down. I talked to a woman in Phoenix last year, 68 years old, worked as an executive assistant for 37 years. She saved what she could. Had about $190,000 in her 401k when she retired in 2023. Felt pretty good about it. The financial advisor told her she could safely withdraw 4% a year. That's $7,600 annually. Add her Social Security, $1,600 a month, call it $19,200 yearly. Her total, about $26,800 a year. She lives in a paid-off condo, so no mortgage. Sounds manageable, right? Then her HOA fees went from $220 a month to $410. Her homeowner's insurance tripled, literally tripled, from $1,100 a year to $3,400 because of climate risk recalculations. She needed a root canal, $4,000 out of pocket after insurance. A new air conditioning unit, $6,000. Suddenly, that $190,000 that was supposed to last 25 years, at the current burn rate, it'll be gone in 11, and she's healthy, relatively speaking. Now, you might be thinking this is just poor planning, that people should have saved more. But here's the thing. Most boomers entered the workforce in the 1970s and 80s. The 401k didn't even exist until 1978. It was invented as a supplement to pensions, not a replacement. But companies looked at it and realized they could shift all the risk from themselves to employees. By the 90s, pensions started disappearing. The problem? Nobody told workers how much they'd actually need to save, and the math wasn't intuitive. If you're 25 in 1985 and someone tells you to put away 10% of your salary, you're thinking about rent and car payments, not some abstract future 35 years away. Human brains are terrible at exponential thinking. We're linear creatures trying to navigate a compound interest world. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Ed. Electrician his whole life, smart guy. Worked steady from 1976 to 2012. He did save. Put money into a savings account at the bank like his parents taught him. Got 3, maybe 4% interest if he was lucky. Thought he was being responsible. Had about $78,000 saved by 2007. Then 2008 hit. He didn't lose that money directly. The savings account was fine, but his hours got cut, then cut again. By 2009, He was 59 years old and couldn't find full-time work anywhere. Nobody wanted to hire a 60-year-old electrician when they could get a 30-year-old for less. He started pulling from that savings just to cover the gap. By the time Social Security kicked in at 62, he had $18,000 left. He took early Social Security, which permanently reduced his monthly check by 30%. Now he gets $1,200 a month. His rent is $950. You do that math. He drives for a rideshare service 4 nights a week. He's 71. This is where it gets really interesting. The system assumes you'll have multiple income streams in retirement. Social Security was only ever designed to replace about 40% of your pre-retirement income. The rest was supposed to come from pensions and savings. But pensions are nearly extinct. Only 15% of private sector workers have one today. And savings? The median retirement account balance for people aged 65 to 74 is $200,000. That sounds substantial until you realize that at a 4% withdrawal rate, that's $8,000 a year for decades, while healthcare costs are rising at 7% annually, while housing costs are rising at 5%, while inflation eats everything else. The math doesn't work. It's not that people are bad at math. It's that the math itself is broken. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. A huge number of boomers are hanging on because of their house. Home equity has become the accidental retirement plan. I see this constantly. People sitting on $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in equity feels like wealth. But here's the trap. That equity is completely worthless unless you sell or borrow against it. If you sell, where do you live? If you downsize, you're buying into the same inflated market you're selling into. And after realtor fees and moving costs, your net gain is way smaller than you thought. If you take out a home equity line of credit, congratulations. You just gave yourself a mortgage in retirement at 8 or 9% interest. I watched a couple do this last year. Pulled out $90,000 to cover medical bills and a new roof. Their monthly payment is $780. They're both 76. That payment doesn't go away. It's like they added a second rent on top of everything else. There's a guy I know from church, we'll call him Frank. He worked in manufacturing. Steady job, union benefits, the whole thing. Retired in 2005 at 63 with a small pension and Social Security, was doing fine. Then his wife got Alzheimer's in 2013. The care costs were staggering. Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. Medicaid only kicks in after you've spent down almost everything. He spent $137,000 over 4 years on memory care facilities and in-home help before she passed. Wiped out everything they'd saved. He's 79 now, lives with his daughter and son-in-law. He's grateful, but you can see it in his face. That wasn't the plan. Nobody's plan is to be dependent on their kids at 80. Let me hit you with the healthcare numbers because this is where the whole thing really goes off the rails. Fidelity estimated that a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2025 will need approximately $315,000 saved just for healthcare costs in retirement. Not housing, not food, not travel or anything enjoyable, just healthcare. Premiums, deductibles, copays, prescriptions, dental, vision. And that assumes Medicare doesn't get cut, which is a bold assumption given that the Medicare Trust Fund is projected to be insolvent by 2036. Right now, the average couple pays about $460 a month in Medicare Part B premiums. Part D for prescriptions is another $30 to $50. Medigap to cover what Medicare doesn't, another $150 to $300 monthly depending on the plan. You're at $700 a month before you've seen a single doctor. And if you need specialty drugs, some cancer medications run $30,000 a year, even with coverage. Now, here's the kicker. A lot of boomers didn't just fail to save enough. They actively spent down what they had on things the system told them they were supposed to do. They helped their kids with college because student loan debt was exploding and they didn't want their children crushed under it. They supported aging parents because long-term care for the silent generation fell on them. They went through divorces that split assets in half. They had medical emergencies before they hit 65 and Medicare eligibility. A guy I used to work with had a heart attack at 61. The bills, even with employer insurance, were $47,000 out of pocket. He had $82,000 in his 401k. He's 68 now and just told me he's planning to work until 75 if his health holds. The financial advice industry keeps saying the same thing. Start early, save 15%, diversify, max out your 401k. And that's fine advice if you're 25 in 2026, but it's useless for someone who's 68 right now trying to figure out how to make it to 85. The advice industrial complex lives in theory. The people I'm talking about live in reality. And reality is a 73-year-old man stocking shelves at 4:30 in the morning because the alternative is choosing between blood pressure medication and groceries. Let's talk about what people are actually doing to survive this, because the adaptations are pretty revealing. Some are moving to lower cost of living states: Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Arizona, chasing cheaper housing and no state income tax. Sounds good until you factor in that Florida's homeowners insurance market is collapsing and property insurance is now 5 or 6 times what it was 5 years ago. Others are house hacking, renting out rooms to strangers, or moving in with family. There's a growing trend of Golden Girls arrangements where 3 or 4 single retirees share a house to split costs. It works, but it's also an admission that the single-family retirement dream is dead for a lot of people. Some are taking part-time jobs, not career jobs. Grocery store cashier, retail, warehouse work. I watched a 79-year-old woman scanning items at Target last week. She was cheerful. Maybe she loves it. Maybe she has no choice. I didn't ask. Some are claiming benefits early, taking Social Security at 62 instead of waiting until 70. It's a brutal trade-off. Claiming at 62 instead of full retirement age at 67 cuts your benefit by 30% permanently. But if you need the money now, you need it now. Future optimization doesn't matter when you can't pay today's electric bill. Then there's the people who are just falling through completely. Senior homelessness is skyrocketing. In Los Angeles County, the number of homeless people over 50 increased by 20% between 2018 and 2023. These aren't people who were homeless their whole lives. These are people who worked for decades, got hit by a perfect storm of job loss, medical crisis, housing cost explosion, and ran out of runway. I saw a woman in her 60s on the side of the freeway last month, holding a sign, blanket over one arm, suitcase with wheels. The look on her face wasn't desperation. It was exhaustion, like she'd been fighting for so long and just ran out of fight. You think this is about bad personal choices? Let me give you a real scenario with real numbers. Meet Susan, composite character but based on 5 real people I know. She's 67, worked as a teacher for 32 years. Pension pays her $2,100 a month. Social Security adds $1,400. Total income, $3,500 monthly, $42,000 yearly. She owns her home outright, bought it in 1991 for $110,000. It's worth $420,000 now. Sounds comfortable. Here's her monthly expenses in 2026. Property tax, $360. Homeowners insurance, $415. Utilities, $220. Car insurance, $170. Gas, $110. Groceries, $400. Medicare and supplemental insurance, $680. Prescriptions, $190. Phone and internet, $115. That's $2,660 before any entertainment, clothing, home repairs, or unexpected costs. She's got $840 a month cushion. Last year, her roof needed replacing, $14,000. Her emergency fund had $6,000. She took out a home equity line of credit for the rest. Now add $225 monthly payment. Cushion drops to $615. This year, her property tax is going up another 8%. Insurance is going up 12%. She just found out she needs cataract surgery on both eyes. Out of pocket after Medicare, $3,800. The cushion is evaporating. She's thinking about getting a part-time job. She's 67 years old with a pension and Social Security, and she's thinking about getting a job. That's not failure. That's math. The dot-com crash in 2000 and the housing crisis in 2008 were 1 to 2 punches that a lot of boomers never recovered from. If you were 55 in 2008 with 300,000 in your 401k and it dropped to 170,000, you didn't have time to wait for it to recover. You were 10 years from retirement. Some people panicked and sold at the bottom, locking in losses. Others held on but stopped contributing because they'd lost faith in the market. Either way, the compounding they needed in that critical final decade didn't happen, and inflation is doing to this generation what it did to their parents' generation. The purchasing power of a dollar has fallen by about 96% since 1913. $1,000 in 1970 has the same buying power as about $7,600 today. Social Security adjusts for inflation, but it lags. And it doesn't adjust for the fact that seniors spend a disproportionate amount of their income on healthcare, which inflates faster than general inflation. Here's what nobody wants to admit. The promise was a lie. Not intentionally, maybe, but structurally. The promise was work hard for 40 years, save diligently, and you'll have a comfortable retirement. That promise assumed pensions would exist, assumed housing would stay affordable, assumed healthcare costs would be reasonable, assumed you wouldn't live to 95, assumed the stock market would deliver consistent 7% returns, assumed your kids wouldn't need financial help, assumed you wouldn't get divorced, assumed you wouldn't have a medical crisis before 65, assumed a lot of things that turned out not to be true for millions of people. And when all those assumptions break, the person holding the bag isn't the system, it's the individual. So what do you actually do if you're staring down retirement in 2026 and the numbers don't work? 3 things. First, get brutally honest about your real expenses. Not what you think they should be, what they actually are. Track every dollar for 3 months. Most people are off by 30 to 40% when they estimate. Second, if you have home equity and no mortgage, consider a reverse mortgage, but understand exactly what you're getting into. It's not free money. It's a loan against your home that gets repaid when you sell or die. It can be a tool, but it's expensive and it eats your equity. Third, if you're still working and you're over 50, contribute the maximum to your 401k, including catch-up contributions. In 2026, you can put in $31,000 if you're over 50. If your employer matches anything, that's free money. Take it. And frankly, if the math still doesn't work, working part-time might not be a moral failing. It might just be reality. The system isn't going to fix itself because the system isn't broken for the people who designed it. It's working exactly as intended. Risk shifted from institutions to individuals. Costs externalized. Profit maximized. You were told it was a meritocracy, where hard work equals security. Turns out, it was a game of musical chairs, and they kept removing chairs while telling you to walk faster.